Guest is Graeme Morris. Welcome, Graeme. How are you?
How you doing, mate? Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure.
It's a pleasure, man. I'm looking forward to the chat. We've had about 20 minutes of a chat before we started. And then as soon as I tried to intro you, I couldn't talk anymore. So I was hoping you give us a brief background into, like, nothing crazy, but where you are at the moment, what you're doing, where you've come from, I suppose, and what's been going on.
Okay. At the moment, I am based in Melbourne, and I'd say I'm fun employed, but I just finished up a contract at the AFL. I was the head of strength and conditioning for the AFL umpires, but obviously I do my own thing on the side for a while, and I'm kind of looking for work, but I'm sitting on the fence whether or not I'm just going to push this private thing. But look, I'm a farmer's boy, to be honest, from the very start. I grew up on a dairy beef farm, lived in Perth, did all my uni there. I lived in London for a few years, moved to Sydney, worked in rugby league for 6 seasons. And now I've swung across to Melbourne, and now I'm kind of trying to work out where my life's headed, mate. So it got me at a different time.
Crossroads. Is it
It's a crossroads.
Is it AFL you'd be most interested in, or are you open to anything?
I'm open to any field sports, AFL, rugby league, rugby union. I've been working with quite a few fighters at the moment as well, which I really, really enjoy. Because what I find is with sports, one of the things that I really, really enjoy is winning. And with the fighting game, there's nothing more like if you lose, it has massive ramifications. And if you win, so I really enjoy the fighting aspect, because it means more when someone's trying to knock your head off. And someone gets to win. But probably a team sport. But if not, I'll go down the same route I'm doing at the moment, the private thing at the moment, which, as you know, it gives you quite a high quality of life and the freedom to do your things.
Yeah.
And I think more and more people are looking down this road at the moment. So either way, I'm okay with what's going on.
Yeah. The winning stuff is like, I privately, like, you can get that buzz privately as well. Obviously with your fighters, you're getting that buzz. But it is something that's hard to replace when, like, you have been. Now, for me, I would be much smaller part of an athlete's journey, like, than you would be. Let's say I'm just rehabbing them and then setting them back into the wild. But like, when I'm watching TV and there's an athlete there that I've worked with, I'm so much more invested. I'm like, it's so exciting. Like,
I haven't worked in team sports for a couple of years, just more consulting stuff. But yeah, I do miss the game day and like being nervous on the sideline and watching the boys play and stuff like that. It's very exciting.
Yeah.
But also it's quite stressful when you have a few losses. Someone gets hurt and people are pointing fingers at you.
Yeah, they're never fit enough when they lose. It's always a fitness issue. Never tactical, technical, anything else.
Yeah, when you're dropping the footy and you're causing all these turnovers and all you're doing is defending, it's the S&C coach's fault.
yeah. And in Ireland, when the team, like, whatever team wins the All-Ireland final in hurling or football that year, the S&C coach is like plastered all over the newspaper for the next 6 months or for the next year. He's the new thing. Like, every team wants to get his program or whatever, because they just put down winning versus losing a lot of the time to that team was the fittest team in Ireland.
And I work with quite a few Gaelic footballers, even a few hurlers and stuff like that. And sometimes they send through, I won't say what clubs they work for, but sometimes they send me through some of their fitness and what they do. It's crazy how much fitness they do. I'm like, the volume's massive. And I'm like, oh no, we can cut back there. Like, in the off season, I've cut it way back. I'm like, let's just focus on these things, because I don't think you need that much work, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think sometimes there's a bit of a, compared to the game demands, you probably don't need that much volume.
Yeah. I think so too. If you came to Ireland, you get a job, no problem.
Yeah.
How did that come over? How did that happen with the GA players?
I have no idea, mate. I have no idea. I think it might be because I wrote quite a few articles in the past for Kier's website.
Yeah.
maybe the Irish like the Euros, and they're buying my programs off Aussie dollars.
Yeah.
They're like, huh, this is cheap ads.
That makes my programs in Australia expensive then.
Yeah, I'm sure they're doing all right, mate.
Yeah, they're doing okay.
You know what? I think one of the strengths I think I've developed over the years is that I'm very good at managing stresses. The amount of speed work someone needs, the amount of change direction work they need, the conditioning, the amount of gym work they need. And then I'm quite good at structuring that around, because I've worked in a lot of semi-professional settings, and it's actually very, very challenging because it doesn't make sense. When you're in a full-time setting, it's easy. Oh, we do speed first, and we do the field work first, and then we do the gym. But in semi-professional settings, it doesn't work like that. It's all over the shop.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I pride myself on is in this real chaotic situation where things are really, really difficult, maybe they have to do some strength work before field, but like, okay, we're going to put this in here, but we're going to reduce the posterior chain work. Maybe we'll hit some of that in post-training or the next day. I'm good at managing it like that. So I think guys still get their adaptations, but they can stay fresh.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of where I've got a little bit of a niche here.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. Definitely there's a niche in Ireland for that, because I think they're doing too much. They're doing too much. Like club players, not just inter-county players, but club players are doing way, way too much. And actually, they put almost zero value on developing the technical skills of the game. Like you see players who are spending hours in the gym, running the roads, and they can't solo a ball, they can't kick a ball, they can't catch a ball very well. It's madness. It's madness. And that's where they're being let down. Like
100%. And if you just focus majority of your stuff on technical, tactical work, a lot of times people don't realize how much strength you can get and fitness you can get from a little bit less.
Yeah. And
what I find is quite often, like people actually, they're doing so much work that the fatigue masks their fitness anyway. And they're just always tired. So their fitness doesn't actually show.
Yeah.
And quite often, if you reduce that volume a little bit, and they actually feel a lot better.
Yeah.
And they actually perform better.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. That'll change now in the GA, I think, because the team who won it this year, that won Gaelic football, Tyrone, they were obviously incredibly fit, incredibly strong, incredibly well conditioned. Don't get me wrong, but every single player on the field looked like they could play in any position, and their skills were unbelievable. And basically, they were so well drilled, like they played as a unit. Every player was really comfortable on the ball, and they just sucked the life out of the opposition. And the opposition, Mayo, were probably as fit, like they're considered one of the fittest teams in Ireland, but they just go 100 miles an hour from the start, and Tyrone just completely sucked the life out of them. So I think hopefully that's a lesson for people.
Well, at the end of the day, if you're put in a position where you're chasing and you're not you're not doing your game plan, is that it's going to create fatigue.
Yeah.
And generally the team that, technically more skillful side that plays to their game plan, they can put their game plan on the other team, they're always going to look fitter.
Yeah.
Because they're making less mistakes and they're putting other teams into positions that they're vulnerable, which saps energy. So,
and they have the ball more.
100%.
And when you can run a lot more when you have the ball versus when you're trying to chase a fella, it breaks your heart.
It's much more fun attacking, isn't it?
Yeah. What you have a big presentation coming up, I hear.
Yeah, I'm presenting for the track and football consortium. Is consortium? I'm not sure. Consortium. There you go. I've never been good with I struggle speaking English, mate. So
me either. Me too. When is that?
Well, I think it's all going to be online.
Okay.
So I'm starting to put it together now, actually.
Yeah.
I've got a few interesting things to put together. I'm just going to talk about, I think it's going to be, I haven't given a topic, but I'm probably going to blend in some field-based stuff with some gym work for team sport scenarios, because what I find is that you don't actually have a whole lot of time to increase people's speed on the field, because obviously a lot of the time spent in specific skill sessions. So how do I implement that? And then also how much I'm trying to combine certain things in the gym to combine that.
Yeah.
So we get the most out of that, because at the end of the day, it's a running based. Most team sports are running based sports. So I put a massive premium on the ability of guys to run and be quick and move in multi directions.
Yeah.
With efficiency.
That's what I wanted to mostly chat to you about, I suppose, is like introducing. So let's say you have an athlete that has been playing sport his whole life, running his or her whole life, but now you're working with them, and like, let's presume they've done a little bit in the gym, they're aware of their body a little bit, but you're going to start to actually implement some running work separate to the sport itself. Like how does that, what does that look like? Where do you start? Because like, I'm particularly interested in that, because obviously that's a stage in the rehab process as well, I suppose, is reintroducing that running. And one of my big things is like, not just reintroducing the running as exposure to running, but actually using it as an opportunity to improve technique and all of that stuff. So I think that's a big thing that is rarely talked about, because I think people actually believe you can't improve technique, but I think you can improve technique. But especially if someone hasn't ever practiced it much before. But where does that start? What does that look like for you or your athlete?
Yeah, I mean, to start with, like, I mean, it's a pretty complex topic, but I'd say, I just really work on the basics to begin with. I like to separate things into basic acceleration and max velocity. I try to work to a technical model. Now, with that being said, it's quite often, a lot of his acceleration positions aren't actually going to occur in a team sport scenario, because quite often they're upright anyway, and then they're accelerating in an upright position. But I still think that you can work back towards a technical model, and know certain positions that are important and try and hit them within training. And I think that will transfer across. But I mean, I start with basic drills. I think extensive plyometric, extensive hops, that, like those Altus rudimentary series, I think extensive hops and those type of things are really, really important for all athletes. They stay in my programs year round for every athlete, from a low level athlete to a high level athlete, just to make them more robust, but also to give them a little bit more elasticity, which I think is quite important, because a lot of low level people start out, they don't know how to apply force into the ground. So I like to different types of hops, different types of pogos, things like that, a variety of those things, just in extensive fashion to begin with. I like quite a few A drills to begin with, just basic A drills. Just got to be careful with some of the A drills. People get really, really high over their knee, which is not really specific to running. So I try and monitor that. But the thing is, because running is such a, it's more of what they say, a hindbrain activity, sprinting is happening at a fast speed. A lot of people have problems changing that technique. So with the basic drills, I think you can hit these positions and provide context to running. Now, for a high elite level athlete, probably not. Maybe it doesn't have any transfer, but I think for a lower level athlete, and to be honest with you, a lot of field sport athletes move like shit. And they haven't been too exposed to these lot of things. And we're talking about this before off air. They're starting to gain a lot more popularity and all that. But I think I really like just the basic A drills to begin with. But once people start getting better at that, I like the switching drills. I prefer the switching, because I think athletes really struggle to learn how to switch. So the things like the booms, so just your basic A skips will start being A skips with switches, booms, booms, A runs, but basic scissor drills, even the bent leg scissor drills I like. Then I like to do potentiation exercises. If it's a acceleration day, I like resisted work. If it's a max velocity day, I like to use wickets, because at the end of the day, I'm not a track and field coach. I'm a strength and conditioning coach that's really try to learn a lot of running stuff. So if I try and put athletes into use constraints so that they learn these things, because, and I try and use really basic cues, because I hear people screaming out all these different cues, and I'm just like, there's no way they can understand that. Just make it really, really simple cues, and just understand that a lot of time they're not going to look perfect straight away. But but athletes will actually quite often learn to self-organize and make themselves better. But if you give them too many cues, they really struggle with that. Interesting thing, actually, after I was speaking to Joel Smith, he was talking about the wicket drills. This is slightly off topic, but
that's okay.
He was telling me about how, well, he was thinking that a lot of people were focusing on too much frontside mechanics. And what I was doing, so what I did was I started timing people coming out of the wickets into flying tens. And then I switched the wickets upside down, the 15 centimeters, I switched them upside down. And guys were running through the wickets, the upside down, 1/10 of a second quicker through the 10 meters. And then I went back through, and I'm going to talk about this in my presentation, but I went back through and I was like, guys were running too tall.
Mm-hmm.
They were stepping over the wickets and they weren't getting this hip extension because they were too tall.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I went over the lower wickets, all of a sudden they were in a little bit a better position for their hamstrings, adductors, and their glutes, probably the stronger position to create that hip extension. So I've dropped my wickets down now to start with cones for basic level guys, and then I'm turning the wickets upside down because a lot of athletes really struggle to get. I think that's the most common problem they have, is that people just dumped in anterior tilt when they run, and then they start heel striking. So, but yeah, basic drills. But I think the most important thing is just expose people to speed, because just exposing people to speed is really, really important, because they're going to be exposed to speed in the games. So you might as well, some people are, I don't want to expose them to speed because their technique's not right, but they're going to sprint in games anyway. Mm-hmm. So I think you've got to try and get a combination of those things. So yeah, basic drills, extensive plyometrics. With my max velocity work, I go from generally build-up sprints to more intensive stuff like fly sprints to floating sprints. With my acceleration work, they might start off with softer starts, might be a little bit easier for them to begin with, like walk-ins and things like that, because it's less muscular contributions. Then we might start doing more stuff from static starts if they have the strength to do that. But I think also, I think with these beginner guys, hand position is really important. Just getting their hands right. And a lot of times, if you can get their hands right, their legs will follow. Mm-hmm. And as I said before, basic cues.
What do you mean by when you say hands right? What does that mean?
Well, a lot of people just don't know where to put their hands. Just get their hands in the right position. And you got some people teaching these 90 degree drills, which is absolute rubbish.
Yeah.
And they look like robots.
Yeah.
And the other thing I think is really important is that you've got to, and this is stuff I've been working on this year, and all the stuff that you obviously do and stuff like that. What I've come to the realization is some people will struggle improving their running technique because they don't have the options to do that. So that, once you can start, if someone can't get into a more of a stacked position, they can't do that. You might have trouble changing that technique. So you've got to do some work in a gym and that. And that's when I started, okay, let's work on some stacked positions and get that stack. Start doing some hip shifting work. Mm-hmm. So at the start, you might try and get your obliques working, your proximal hamstrings to get a bit more better control there. Yeah. Then start working the hip shifting so they have this internal rotation and not like robots.
Yeah.
They can get onto the stance side of their leg. So I've been trying to combine all those types of things that you have in your work with my basic running progressions.
Yeah.
And just keeping it simple.
Yeah. And it changes it, doesn't it? Like people will argue, right? And I understand the argument that the only way you can change running is by working on running. And like they are right. But if you're looking at someone who's running and they just do not have the options in their body, you don't want to be giving someone cues. You don't want to be giving someone rules on this is how you run. You just want to make sure that they have the options and then put the right constraint or task or a small cue or something in place. But if they don't have the option in the first place, then you're not going to change it. So
exactly,
I would argue against people that say that you can't change that in the gym or doing a little bit of mobility work or whatever it is.
Yeah.
If it gives them an option that they don't have access to, then, and their brain likes it and they can practice it a little bit, it absolutely can change it.
100%. I think you need to have good control of your pelvis. Obviously, a lot of people don't don't have the ability to posterior tilt at all. People can't hip shift, they have no internal rotation, they don't have a dynamic rib cage. So those type of things, I think, really, really do transfer to the field. Then I think if you're a beginning coach, use constraints to put guys into good positions, use basic cues. And if Dan Paff always says, find the biggest virus. Like, what is the big virus? What is causing this? Because once you fix that one virus, quite often, a lot of the other things will work itself out.
Yeah.
And then don't over cue and don't confuse people, because quite often they'll work it out themselves.
Yeah. The arm stuff like that you're seeing, I wonder, is that like where the arms are all over the place? I wonder, is that because they don't have a dynamic rib cage, they don't have a spine? Basically, the easiest way to see this is if you see someone walking down the street and you see like arms swinging all over the place, just look at the spine and you'll see that it's not moving at all. And they're trying to generate that motion like distally using the arms because they're trying to make up for approximately there's no movement. Or there's another one where the arms literally don't move.
Or one just moves. One
moves, exactly. Yeah.
And then what you'll find is as well is like a lot of guys, especially in team sports, they have a lot of shoulder recos and stuff like that, shoulder reconstructions and stuff. And then you'll see, when your arm swings backwards, you need to have that internal rotation, and they've got nothing there, and they're really blocky. Yeah. And then it kind of it translates down below. Then they start having soft tissue problems. I can't prove this, but I'm like, if they don't have good rotation of their upper body, it's going to move down the chain as well. So I think it all works together. So definitely all those things are really important, I think.
It'll be a while before we can prove anything there, but like, if you look at it's never going to be symmetrical, not a chance. And we don't even want it to be symmetrical. Nothing in the body is symmetrical. But like, if you see an arm, a shoulder that goes into extension and like looks really good by your technical model, whatever that says, and then you see a left shoulder, let's say, that never goes behind the body, almost never goes behind the body, like, you're going to want to give it that option at least, and at least check in like passive range of motion or active range of motion, can it actually get there? Because if it can't get there, then it's not that the athlete's body or the athlete's nervous system is choosing not to use it, it's that it can't use it. Exactly. So give it the ability, give it the sensation of being able to use that, and then step back and see what happens. And I would say the vast majority of the time, it will start to change. Yeah,
100%. I totally agree with you.
The drills on the tall, running tall stuff, I wonder if it's that, like, okay, probably an athlete is maybe overextended already, and now they're trying to run a bit tall, or maybe as a result of the wicket, they're landing on a more extended knee, like they're not generating them co-contractions then around the knee joint, and they're not getting an active hip extension. So
they're not getting as much range of motion to move over as well.
Exactly.
They're already in that, they don't have as much space. I was going to say something about that then as well. Oh, and the other thing is, I think people are scared about, they think backside mechanics is bad, but backside mechanics is not bad if you have a good lumbo-pelvic control. Like, you need good backside mechanics to actually produce hip activation, right? Sorry, hip extension to come front side in the thing. But the problem is that a lot of athletes are coming backside with their pelvis tipped so far forward, and then they're having trouble on the swing phase, and then their legs clawing out and their heel striking so far ahead. But if you give them an ability to have control of that pelvis, then, what is it, 15 degrees? I'm not sure how much hip extension you should have, but if you measure your athlete's hip extension, is terrible.
They're nowhere near 0 degrees. Not a chance. Yeah.
So it's like, well, if they can't do that in a static situation, I don't think it's happening in running either.
I had my brother in yesterday or 2 days ago. He's kind of back locked up a little bit, and I was just checking his hip extension on both sides and his adduction, and like, I was bringing him back towards hip extension, and then as soon as you feel the back go, like, that's the end of the test, or the pelvis wants to spill forward, that's the end of the test. And I was like, there's your hip extension there. And he looked down, and it was like 25 degrees off 0. And he was like, what the fuck? Like, he could not believe it. And he's a good athlete. And like, that's not like, I would say a lot of athletes would test like that. They do test like that, but like it just helps you understand why you're seeing what you're seeing when they actually go and run, you know.
And then you test the hip internal rotation. I mean, you're like, it's non-existent. And I see that all the time. And then you're like, well, how are you loading your glutes at mid stance?
And they don't need much, but they need some.
Yeah, I remember I messaged you about that. And then these are the guys that all use their back extensors, right, to run.
Yeah.
And when people start using their backs when they're running, that's when I start getting worried about hamstring problems as well.
Yeah.
Because when people start complaining about their backs, I'm like, oh, here we go. You know, especially pre-seasons, guys start running heaps.
Yeah.
On my back, you're like, oh no, hammy's coming.
Yeah, tight back is that's a red flag. You need to be thinking shit.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So just getting that
combine that tall, like maybe they're up too tall, so you're teaching someone maybe to run too tall. They're probably going to have that leg like swinging miles out in front of them, like you're saying. That back is extending, so you have a hamstring now that's lengthening proximally and distally. Like it shouldn't be really lengthening proximally and distally at the same time, one or the other. And like it's not hard to see why that can have a big impact on what's happening.
And then you got guys trying to improve all their numbers in the weight room, doing shit deadlifts, low bar back squats, Nordics with so much extension that it's not, I don't even know if they're training their hamstrings. And then, you know, you're like, oh, my hamstrings are strong. No, they're not. Your back's strong. You know?
Yeah.
Like all the Nordics and that I see, like, I'm just like, well, why don't you do a banded Nordic, keep good shape?
Yeah.
I bet you can't come back up if you keep good shape. It's still an eccentric.
I had someone the other day tell me, a physio the other day, I won't mention her name, but they were actually, let me get this right. They were testing the athletes on a NOR board or whatever. They were testing the athletes' hamstrings because they suspected a tissue injury there, but they weren't sure. So they said, we'll actually check it here. And I think they were able to check right side versus left side, and it showed up absolutely nothing. No change in strength right versus left or whatever. And perfect symmetry or whatever, and no pain, no anything like that. And they went and actually ended up, he was like, no, I have a problem here. There's something wrong. And I think they got an MRI and there was a tear there. But it turns out he was just doing these Nordics and so much back extension that he wasn't even stressing his hamstring that much.
And I've used a Nord board on that in the past. I remember when I was at West Tigers a few years ago, but my two strongest guys on the Nord board actually had hamstring injuries that year. They both tore their hammy. And I was like, but it's because when you're testing them, like they're just doing anything.
Anything
to get this score. Now, I'm not saying, I don't want people to say, oh yeah, but this and that. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, if you're doing these exercises and all you're doing is using your back, the hamstring's probably not as strong as you think they are.
Yeah.
And then because they're not playing. You see this whole, I don't know if we should go there, this whole knees over toes thing. And like, I'm looking at these positions and I'm like, I'm just like, they're so extended through their chest, their rib cage, and so much anterior tilt, and they're jamming through there. I'm like, are you training what you think you're training? I'm not sure.
Yeah. But do you see many of those athletes? Do you see many of the people who go down them programs actually play field-based sports where they're opening up into max velocity and stuff like that? Probably not.
Yeah,
probably not. And like having to change direction and overcome muscle slack and stuff like that, I would say.
Yeah. And then I think like the big thing, like I've got from some of your programs and that, is just trying to get that coordination between the different tissues, the co-contractions, what you're talking about. Can you get the glute, the hamstring, and the calf to fire together? And things like that. Just like you do those things, you don't need it anyway, and your body's just screaming and you're shaking. You're like, this doesn't make sense. Why is this so bloody hard? But we know muscles are slaves to joint position quite a few times. Like if you put them in the right position, it's pretty crazy what can happen.
It just makes sense. Like if you want to train if you want to train a Nordic, if you're going to lie down and do a prone hamstring curl, like a bodybuilding exercise, which I like a lot actually, like it should make sense that like the machines, bodybuilders understand the machines are set up with certain ways to target a certain muscle, right? And I'm going to put stress through a certain muscle. And if I change the moment arm, if I change whatever, it's going to change how well I can stress that muscle. So it should make sense. If you're going to do a Nordic curl, should you not think about setting it up in a certain way that you're going to actually stress the hamstring, the tissue in the most amount possible? And that should mean then that we're going to look for somewhat of a more neutral pelvis, or put a band in, maybe use a little bit less back extensors, and that's by virtue of that use more hamstring and strengthen it. It will humble you for a while because you can't go as deep, but like it's nothing against the Nordic. I love Nordics, but like
100%.
That's a basic training principle.
I don't. End of the day, if you're going to do something, just do it with good technique. Like, you know what I mean? Because exercise is there to train certain tissues. If you're doing shit technique, it's highly likely you're not training what you think you're training. But the problem is, I think a lot of people think that a lot of people tie themselves up to the numbers that they produce in the weight room, and they feel like, okay, if I get these numbers up in the weight room, I've done my job. But you know, I think that's a disservice to your athletes, because a lot of the time you're not getting the outcomes that you're after. And what we're trying to do is like use these different methods and tools to try and enhance performance. And sometimes it might mean that your athletes are probably just lifting slightly less with good technique. But that's going to make probably a more resilient, a more robust athlete. And the tissues are probably going to be stronger. You might not lift as much, but I think it's probably going to be more beneficial for the athlete.
There might be less load going through their body globally, but which might not be what you want for like a nervous system potentiation thing or like inhibition thing. Like you want as much load going through some of the time at least, so that they feel that much stress on their body, and the nervous system allows you to then access that another time. But like, I think you can get that from your maximum sprinting anyway.
100%. Let's face it, if you run with good technique, it's probably the most best hamstring strengthening exercise you can do. I think there's studies out there to show that like nothing compares to upright sprinting with good technique. But you know, like, that's not to say you can still, like when you bucket all your different exercises and all your things you have your speed work, you change direction work, you have all the drills I stole from you and all a bunch of other guys who use them a warm up. I think that's like kind of servicing you. It's like having a car and you're servicing the car. You're making sure it's efficient, everything's running smoothly. And then you might do your speed and the power work where you're trying to get that exposure to what you're talking about. And then you might have a main lift where you don't care if a technique goes out the window a little bit, you know, because you're trying to chase that strength there. But then on the accessories and that, I think, you know, okay, here we go. Maybe we can be a bit stricter with these type of things and target specific areas that we want to be strong, robust, resilient, and get certain things. It's just don't do that with everything, you know?
Exactly. Do you think
then?
You
still want guys to go after things and get strong.
Exactly. And their body does need to feel that heavy barbell on their back. Like I think their nervous system needs to feel that. And I think but I think people put it too much emphasis on getting that load through their body, like to cause an adaptation at the level of the muscle. I think it's much less about that. And I think it is more about like almost de-inhibiting the nervous system. Like it's getting used to feeling that much load and that much stress. I think it's more about that than a tissue thing. But I don't know. But that's what I think.
But also I think people also forget that strength's task specific as well. It's a funny story, like when me and Kia back in the day we went to Thailand, and like I'd been doing Muay Thai for probably about 5-6 years. I thought I was getting it right, and I was at 105 kilos at the time. And I went, this guy's like, let's do some clinching, and he was like probably 80 kilos. He absolutely ragdolled me, just threw me around. Like I was like, what's going on? And one of my mates back in Sydney, he's had 250 fights maybe. He fights at 68, 70 kilos, Thai. First fight when he was 7. He can't do a bodyweight split squat. Can't do a bodyweight split squat with any control. I did it with him and I was like, oh my God, like this is crazy. He picks up 100-kilogram guys and throws them on their head. Like I swear to God, he dumps them on their head. And then that just makes me think, what am I been studying all these years? I'm a fraud.
I think does that transfer then make more sense it's easier to see transfer or lack of transfer sometimes. It's easier to see in the fight game maybe than field sport.
Well, I think if you ever do a martial arts, what it does is I think it changes the way you view performance training in general. Because you'll see these people, and a lot of them are not strong. You see them lifting, they're weak. But they can throw stuff with such power and strength, and they're so strong in these certain positions. And it all comes down to, a lot of strength and conditioning coaches in the past have just focused on motor potential and have forgot about this technical mastery. You've got to have good control, rhythm, coordination, timing, synchronization, and being good at technique and all these things. And then you add the motor potential to it, and that's when the magic happens.
I spent some time training with like Chinese martial arts. Now it was much more about like relaxation and stuff. They were all about that, and that's what I was doing it for. It wasn't for there was not much expression and movement, but you did see forms like there was kicking and punching and stuff like that. But all they talked about was the tendons, and like they didn't have a good basis on like up-to-date science necessarily. It's like these are the texts that were written 5,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago, and it's all about just energy transfer and tendons. And it was like we do not care about like having big muscles. None of them had big muscles. It was just all about energy transfer and tendons. And I don't know what they exactly mean by that, but I can kind of see it when I see them throwing a kick or a punch. Yeah,
it doesn't matter until you got someone the equal level who's bigger.
Exactly.
Then it matters. But at an even body weight, you got a more skillful guy and a stronger guy, and at roughly the same body weight. Quite often, the skillful guy will win. But
in every sport.
And if you can put those, and quite often, and like even like in preseason rugby and that, like the strongest guys in the gyms rarely were the best grapplers. Like we used to have these wrestle rooms in like, a lot of the good wrestlers weren't the strongest guys in the gym. So I think it's just about knowing these types of things, and working back to the demands of the sport and working out what exercises. What's the purpose of the exercise and how are you going to transfer it across? And just try and tick off all these different boxes. We've got some specific work's going to have higher transfer. We've still got these weight room things that try and make us more robust, more resilient. Other exercises are going to give us movement options and make us feel better. That's another thing. Like I went to Michael Dango's gym probably 3-4 years ago, and I remember speaking to him. He's just like, you just got to make athletes feel good. And I was like, I thought about it and I was like, that's crazy. Like when my body feels good, I always perform at my best as well. Like when you feel good, you play good quite often. Because when you feel good, you actually get some quality training in. You start stacking up those hours and hours and hours. So just I think, that's keeping guys, as Fergus Connolly says, there's a technical, tactical, physiological, psychological, but it's all underpinned by health. That's it.
Feeling good. I had a client the other day who was a trainer, and he's trying to get back to playing football, football. I call it soccer. What would you call it? Football or soccer as well. Yeah, it's soccer for you as well. But he's been doing 4 weightlifting sessions a week, and he's trying to train once a week, then soccer, and play 1 game a weekend, I think, as well. And he was getting some niggles and was feeling like crap. I was like, you just need to do two weightlifting sessions, cut out 2 sessions. And like, that's one of my biggest tricks with a client is like, how much are you doing? Just do a bit less. And they'll probably feel good. It's right, like in season, like now, look, that might catch up with me at some stage as well, where actually like they are losing strength, but I think you can maintain a hell of a lot and gain more with 2 sessions a week in the gym. You can easily gain more.
Well, I've got a soccer athlete at the moment because we were stuck in lockdown for so long and they weren't sure they're going to go back to season. and he plays semi-professional. And like during that period, we did a heap of work. And he's just like, I'm getting really fatigued in season, because what they were doing is they crammed all his games in to try and get him out before the end of the year.
Yeah.
And I was just like, yeah, just cut it all off, cut it out. Like, just try and get one session in a week, and just find these small little windows. Just keep all your mobility, all your lower level drills in. And then if you have a little bit of a space, just hammer that with good quality movements, get a couple of adaptations, but don't go crazy. Because you'll keep hold of all those other threads. You can keep all those things a lot longer than you think.
Yeah.
Especially the strength stuff.
Yeah.
Strength stays around. Like, how many people didn't lift over the lockdown period and within a month are nearly as strong as where they were before they went out?
Yeah.
You're like, oh,
yeah.
what happened?
Or it's back, or it's back to where it was within 1 or 2 sessions. And I would argue that's not even strength. That's just the skill of the movement that you're practicing. You just needed to polish up on it a little bit.
And 100%. And that's the scary thing is when people are trying to squeeze out their athletes, they're trying to squeeze out this last 10% of their back squat or something. And I want to go from 180 to 200, but you're not getting any adaptations to the field. All you're getting better at is lifting a back squat.
Yeah.
Like, you're just getting better coordination of doing that specific lift.
Yeah. You know, some of the oscillatory work that you've been doing. Do you do that? Yeah. Do you do that more with the fighters then, or with everyone?
I do it with my online clients. I've never done it in a team sport setting. I do a lot with my fighters, because especially during, like, for example, I've got a guy now fighting for Australian title boxing next month. But with the fighters, because during the fight camp, they're doing so much training, so much sparring and things like that, that I try and reduce a lot of the eccentric load on their body just to try and reduce the soreness. So I'll put a bit of this oscillatory work in, and look, I can't prove it. I can't prove it. I don't have studies now, but they just feel good. They think it makes them feel really good. And I think I think that relaxation, that turning muscles on and off is really, really important. And I think, you know, what's the Russian scientist? What's his name? Carl talked about in his triphasic book, Matveev. It had like 5 stages
or something. Yeah.
And it was like 5 stages. Sometimes all that Russian stuff, I'm like, where did I get this from? But it sounds cool. It sounds cool.
But there's like 5 Russian guys probably from back then that, like, pretty much up until 5 years ago, every single person referenced them for every single thing. And and they had no, John Kiley actually trashes it. Like, it's like their training theory was it doesn't exist. Like, it's based on science. That's like, when you look into the science, it's like bullshit, but that doesn't mean it doesn't work. It's just,
all models are not
exactly.
Complete. But it's the same as training residuals. I'm like, like strength 30 plus something days, speed 7. I'm like, that sounds cool, and I've always quoted it, but I don't know if it's right.
Yeah.
But anyway, so they talk about what separates the great athletes from the higher level athletes is the ability to relax. And I just played around with this stuff, and the athletes always say, I feel really good. I feel sharper when I'm hitting. I feel more snap, and things like that. And I also think it's just a different stimulus as well. Yeah. And then sometimes I also wonder, is it because I'm reducing some of the load on, and maybe it's just that reduction in load is creating more strength gains or more better nervous system gains or something like that. But if you've never tried it, I suggest people just have a crack at it in a warm up, and then see what happens to the rest of their session. Yeah, see how it feels.
So if someone hasn't tried it before, give them an exercise that they could do and how they could do it.
Like maybe you could, I tend to use it more in my accessory movements, but like I like to use it in my accessory movements. But what I'm saying is, if you've never done it before, you could do it as a warm up to your main. But I like oscillating
in a split squat. So, or like
oscillate. Yeah, I like oscillating split squat. More of a split squats. RDLs, I've done hip thrusters. Also, I like the foam roller one, oscillating leg curl for that.
The ankle pump one, where you just pump the ankle in and out. in hamstring bridge, all that stuff. Like
I've even done it on split squat calf raises, fast as you can go, things like that.
Yeah, the heel taps, all that stuff.
Yeah, and even like that one where I do a rear elevated split squat and you're trying to tap up on the box and you get that foot glute connection. It just opens up your body to different, I think, experiences as well. And you're like, oh, what's going on here?
Yeah. I do a lot of that work in the range. Again, I don't know, like there's no study for this, and like people sometimes slate me for some of that stuff, but I don't really care because it works. But like if someone has, let's say, knee pain in a certain range, like when I go into that amount of flexion, I start to get, that's when it's sore. Like I'll do oscillating, a lot of oscillating work, like just short of that range. And for some reason that seems to, now maybe it's just like a novel stimulus, and then that allows them to move through the full range afterwards. But or maybe it's doing something to, I don't know, like the muscle spindles are doing something to something, but like it seems to help when they just oscillate. And like, but also regardless of that, like it will absolutely tear the shit out of someone's muscle, like burn the hell out of them. And like that's a nice feeling for people.
Yeah, and people, I think people need to understand, it's like, this is not the whole program, it's only a small part of your program. But you know what I've been trialing during the lockdown, because I don't have when I train, I don't have a program. I just go into the gym, I just do whatever I feel like that day. And I've been doing that for like 3-4 years, because I just did so much when I was younger. Now I just like, I love kickboxing and I love just playing around with different things, and I've kind of used myself as a guinea pig. But throughout the lockdown period, you know, people, I started just experimenting. You know, your single leg on your membership site, the single leg hip thruster, where you just go 1 inch of hip extension. The single leg hip thruster. So you're up the top.
Oh yeah.
And all you're doing is just turning your glute on and turning it off.
Yes.
So I started finishing my sessions just like dropping that 1 inch.
Yeah, in the glute class, that one where you go up. Yeah.
So what I was doing was I was finishing my sessions like just dropping that 2 inches and then trying to turn my glute on as quick as possible. Then I relax it, try and turn as quick as possible. And you know how people do the long duration split squats, and you're trying to squeeze in, you know, people trying to hold them for like crazy amount of time. What I was doing was I was just playing around with those in the position, and I was just squeezing, turning my body on and turning it off. Boom, boom, boom. But I'd only do it like 20 times. And I was getting that hamstring and the back leg, everything was firing. I was just turning it on, turning it off. And my body felt pretty cool. I was doing it 3-4 times a week, just those two movements at the end of my session. And I was just playing around with it. And I was like in these ISO positions where I was just like turning it on, turning it off. I don't know. I was like walking around, like after I did those ones, I was walking around like, what's going on here? I felt like walking around like Conor McGregor.
But that's what you start walking like Conor McGregor when, like with the hip thrust one. For anyone who, it's simple. What Graeme is saying is basically go up into, like, so shoulders are on a bench, go up into a hip thrust, a regular hip thrust on a single leg, I think, or maybe you were doing double, but
I was doing single.
Single. I would prefer single. And then he's just going up to the very top, getting the maximal squeeze out of a glute, and then letting it off an inch. And that's kind of, we were doing 2 or 3 inches of that range.
But
you're probably getting, when you actually are deliberate with that, you're going to get a little bit more hip extension. And when you get more hip extension, you get more arm swing. That's what happens. So that's why you're walking like Conor McGregor.
And like, and I remember I told you a story about that pronation, supination exercise. I told you.
Tell me, because I was going to ask you about, so you've had a fairly big injury, right?
I've had a few injuries, mate.
But you've had one in particular.
I've had an ACL before, but the main thing that really was really debilitating, I blew out my disc when I was living in London. Believe it or not, I did Olympic lifting.
Really? And
I was just, I had an Olympic lifting coach back then. And I remember I was cleaning like 130, power cleaning, full clean, like 130. And I remember catching it in the bottom. And I would have been butt winking like all hell, like, you know what I mean, back then. And I caught it. And I remember it just didn't feel right. And for the next month or so, do you think I stopped training? No, I just kept trying to monster everything in the gym. And then one day I started getting this, it was like touching an electric fence. And I was getting this sciatica into my foot. It's like radiating and just boom, boom. And I had to fly from London to Australia the next day, sitting on this plane. And I remember drinking about like 5 glasses of wine and double dropping some Valiums, just trying to knock myself out. I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
Because I was like, at the time I hadn't hurt my back. I hurt my back before. And I was, what's going on?
Yeah.
And then I didn't have time to get it assessed and everything. I went back to the UK, and over there I was misdiagnosed, don't want to have back surgery and all that. Probably in hindsight, I should have had back surgery straight away, because I lost a lot of strength in my leg. I was limping around. Had a lot of muscle wastage. And that was for about 2 years. And then that was probably 2009. Then I come back here. I had another person assess it over here. And so I end up having probably 3 years later, L5S1 microdiscotomy. And I cleaned the disc up, and the nerve wasn't touching anymore. But they said, listen, you got scarring of the nerve.
Which leg?
And
right side.
My left leg.
Left leg, yeah.
Yeah. So I still got slight tingling now, but my foot was tingling for 10 years.
Yeah.
Right.
And did they think that did the surgeon think that if you got that done at the time, or around the time, or a few months after you'd hurt it, that you would have had less like less symptoms now, like for instance down the leg?
Yeah, they reckon if I did it straight away, I probably would have cleared it up, because I had so much loss of muscle strength at the time. Do you know what I mean? In hindsight now, but
other people don't go get surgery and they clean it up and all of that stuff. So that's why, but you gotta, you do some big injury like that, you have to get it assessed, and it's worth at least chatting to a surgeon sometimes and saying, what's the deal here? It doesn't mean, people think that talking to a surgeon, and I'm hard on surgeons sometimes, but it's not a death sentence. You can just take the information they give you and walk away. Yeah, and make a decision.
Yeah. And I mean, I wish I did that, and I didn't. And then, anyways, but post surgery and that, I remember I started feeling shit again a year later, like less than a year later. I was like, I'm going to have surgery again. And I remember going seeing another surgeon, and they're looking at my scans, and I'm like, there's nothing touching. It's just the nerve scarred. And that's when I started. My mate was a physio. I was like, just start trying kickbox or something with me, see if it makes it feel better. He goes, this is not really my physio. He goes, let's just try it, right? And this is around about the time when I'd read all the Stuart McGill books and everything. I was shit scared of bending over. I thought if I was going to lumbar flex my back, my body was going to explode, right?
Yeah.
So I built up.
Don't read his books.
And that's not what I'm saying, but I was like, but I was scared. I was like, I thought that everything was about bracing. That's what
it's what I'm saying, not what you're saying.
You are. It's like everything was about bracing, and I was like, I can't bend over, I can't do these things, and my body just had this in my head that I couldn't do these things. And without a doubt, the stuff that's made the most benefit is all the breathing stuff because this year I ended up doing when I did all the lower body basic stuff first. I knew I was feeling good, but I didn't know the reason behind all this. Yeah. And I was like, and me as a coach, and I'm really neurotic about these things, I was like, I have to learn. I have to know this stuff, right? So I ended up doing that kind of Harris biomechanics course. I ended up doing the Alex Effers one. And obviously now I'm a member in your site, and I'm starting to get my head around these things, and it's made it's just changed. It's looking through this gait and respiration model has really changed the way I look at things, because believe it, I was jammed like this, I was ribbed up like this. My back extensors were on all day. If I look through photos of me standing kickboxing, my toes were gripping into the floor. My center of mass was so far forward, and I was just putting so much pressure on my low back, right? And then I started getting facet joint pain and stuff like that.
Yeah. And then
So
the
just
McGill stuff, the McGill theories there and stuff like that is, so you need to train your core more, right? So you need to learn to brace more and fight the tension on your back with more tension in your front, more tension on your sides. And what ends up happening, like you haven't changed your position, you haven't changed your movement options, you've just ended up squeezing more muscles. So you're literally getting squeezed from front to back, from side to side, and you're just getting co-contractions everywhere. And that is when you're going down a bad path. So like you can't fight tension with tension. You have to learn to just open things up and relax a bit.
Yeah, and I think all the breathing stuff and like just getting my rib cage working, and then didn't realize how weak my bloody hamstrings were, as we were talking about before. Like, you know, I remember I used to have a sit and reach of plus 30 centimeters. Right, but you know, I thought my hamstrings were strong, but then I'd lay my back and do a supine like 90-degree hamstring bridge, and I was weak. It's so bloody weak. My hamstrings were weak. Yeah. My back was doing everything, you know. Even like single-legged hip thrusters, I'd do them, but I'd just be doing it with my chest up. And then when I started getting this lumbo-pelvic control, taking the muscles through full range of motion, started regaining some internal rotation through my hips. My back's never felt better, touch wood. I said, never felt better. Yeah. Like I still had that loss of strength in my leg. Yeah. But I compensate and I work around that, you know. Yeah. I can't run long distances, but I'll run stairs. I kickbox every day. Maybe I'll have a fight one stage. I'm getting a bit old, but I wouldn't mind having a crack. I'll see how I go.
I think you should go for it.
Yeah, I just got to find a coach at hand.
That's easy for me to say, by the way. No, I think you should go. I think you should get in the ring.
I want to have a crack. I'm 30. When I'm 39 next year, 38 now. But I just need to find a good coach that handpicks a good opponent that I can just bash them.
Yeah.
Just don't find anyone that can beat me up.
Yeah.
But I'll kickbox every day, like maybe sometimes twice a day, and you know. I know what drills now work for me. I do some breathing stuff every now and then, some hip shifting exercises, the 90-90 stuff. And like, yeah, so as I said before, it's like having a service on your body.
Yeah.
That's what
how's the springiness like when you're sparring with someone and you're kind of in and out and stuff like that through the feet then, or through the left foot in particular?
Well, it's funny, like if my back's jammed up and I'm not feeling good, I'm stiff.
Yeah.
I'll lose that control of my foot. Yeah. It won't be as strong. I'll feel slow and sluggish. Yeah. But when I'm freed up and I feel good, my legs are a lot stronger. Yeah. And I actually have a bit more pop, but it's definitely weaker on the left side. But the way I've just developed my kind of my style, I work around that.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what that is like, well, what I think that is when you start to see more and more co-contractions proximally, so around the spine, around the center of the body, I think you start to see less distally. So the body starts to like co-contractions are ultimately a protective mechanism first and foremost to when forces are coming into my body, like I'm going to protect myself, and for the most part it wants to protect the center of the body. That's why someone hurts their back and they just end up bracing up completely, and that makes sense for the first week or 2 weeks or however amount of time. Like it makes sense that your body would just brace and it's going to protect you. So when you start to see someone create co-contractions proximally, like everywhere, bracing for everything, it's a very good chance that they can't actually create them distally, so through the foot and the ankle and like around the knee and all of that stuff. Because if they could, there's two ways of looking at it. Like if they could, that force would be dissipated before it comes up into the center of the body. All that vibration is dissipated, it's shared. If they can't create that distally, then they're going to have to create it proximally. So there's two ways of looking at it. I could get you to relax your back, relax your ribs, get your pelvis moving, and that might force the body to start to create them co-contractions distally. Or I could help you create co-contractions distally, and that might help your back actually relax because your body understands now I can actually manage the forces. When my foot hits the floor, I can manage that better, so I don't need to brace my upper body as much. Or what I tend to do is just give people both of those things. So teach them to relax around the spine more and teach them to be stronger and whatever, get some of them co-contractions around the lower limb. So I didn't mean to go off on a soliloquy.
No, you're right.
There,
and I've also had that knee reconstruction. I remember I messaged you, and I did the pronation supination drill. And I don't think my I don't know if the VMO exists, but
Andrew,
so my vastus medialis, I haven't felt it work for a long time, right?
Yeah.
So when I was doing that supination pronation drill, all of a sudden my whole knee was just shaking when I was doing it. Like it was going to smash this massive spasm. And I think I did it like 30 times. And then I was like, I'm time to go to get a coffee. And I sat down, my knee started aching.
Yeah.
Right. I remember I messaged you. I thought, what have I done? I've fucked myself here. I don't know what I've done here. Like, right. I couldn't walk. Yeah. So then I went, after 5 minutes, I went to go get a coffee, and I was like, just struggling to go down the street. And then 10 minutes later, all of a sudden my knee just relaxed. And I was like, it's never moved like this before. And I think you said it's because you'd never had that tibial internal rotation or something. Like all of a sudden I felt so much. It was crazy, man. It blew my mind. I thought I was in trouble for a second, but everything just released and I felt good.
Exactly. And that's where I talk about, like, when you see me talking about like the shin, like proximally going forward, distally coming backwards as I bend my knee. Gary Ward talks about that obviously very well, but the shin doing the shin doing an anterior tilt as you bend your knee, and the femur doing a posterior tilt as you bend your knee. That might not make sense to people. And then there's rotations happening. So like you've done a shit ton of squats, split squats, where you go into full deep knee flexion, and all of this stuff are close to full knee flexion, and loaded it up heavy, and you never felt your VMO, and you never felt your knee moving. It like that was a simple knee bend where you bend it 15 degrees forward and back. And that's why it's because those muscles around the knee are in a position to decelerate rotation. And rotation isn't the femur and the tibia moving in the same speed. Like if they both move in together, there's no rotation happening at the knee. There needs to be relative motion between the bones. And when you see that relative motion, those muscles are decelerating that and trying to pull it back. And you basically gave your VMO a job to do for the first time in a long time. And there was, I would say, the articular surface, like all the stuff inside the knee actually got moving for the first time. And your body, you go and walk, then people think simple drills like that can't transfer over to complex movements like walking or running. They absolutely can. They can, and they will very quickly.
Yeah, and on the way back, when I was coming back in the supination on the outer heel, my hamstring was going crazy as well.
Yeah, so cool. So cool. Cool. That's why, like, people shitting. There's people on Instagram shitting on all different systems and stuff like that at the moment. It's just, it's too much. As small little things can help people. It's just the narrative that you use.
Exactly right. Look, I think it's dangerous to get caught on one side of the system, but on the flip side of that, we need these systems out there so we can steal a little bit of these things and put it into your own system. Like, when people produce these systems, I'm pretty sure they're saying this is not the only way you train. And it seems to be this massive social media push at the moment. I don't know if it's people just thirsty for followers and that, and they just want to make fun of certain things. I don't know what it's all about, but, I try and take little things of each system, you know what I mean? And then how does it benefit me? What are the people I'm dealing with? Does that fit in there? And I think that's what training's about, right? It's finding what's useful, and something could be useful for one scenario, might not be useful for another scenario. So we need these systems in place. And I think it's just the issue is when you get caught one side too far.
And there's a saying, no, exactly. No one's saying that. And there's something out there that's like, people say, in the breathing word, don't go too far down the rabbit hole. And I say that too. What I mean by that is go all the way down the rabbit hole if you want, learn a shit ton of this stuff. But what I mean is, if you're in a rabbit hole, that means you can't see anything else. You can only see what's in this hole. So when I say that, I mean, don't take your eye off everything else, but by all means, go all the way down and learn it. But make sure you are not taking your eye off anything else or everything else, and understand that these are some things I can take here. But when people are saying don't learn about the breathing stuff because you won't end up using it all, or like it's a system in itself and you need to not take your eye off the other things. Who's saying you should take your eye off that and just have your clients lying on the floor all day just breathing? No one. But some people are, but very few people of note are actually saying that. So it's a bad excuse. It's a bad response to someone saying you shouldn't learn stuff just because you're not going to use everything that's there.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the time it's because people were just they're like, oh, people are doing this because they don't want to train hard, and that's rubbish. Like, it's just, you know, you want bits and pieces of everything to try and optimize what you're trying to achieve.
I think you've done a good job with that, man. I really do. Where do you stand on the Bosch stuff at the moment? Just with regards to systems, I suppose. What was the term you coined?
That sounds funny, but I'm just talking about people talking about systems. But that was just
but you said don't go full Bosch, which is exactly what we're saying. It's not exactly like ignore everything that that Bosch says.
Okay, so one thing I think is that's important is that if you do go down a system, what we talked about, that doesn't mean that you throw away proven techniques that'll work. Okay, and then back a few years ago, what I was seeing was everyone was just stop lifting weights and they were just running around with certain things and all that. And on the flip side of that, you know, you might not be driving adaptation, or you might not have overload, right? And then, you know, the weight room is still beneficial for like body armor and all that. And I'm sure Frans probably says the same thing. I'm sure he does. Okay, but what I was finding was people doing all these exercises and that, and I'm like, do you even know why you're doing that?
Yeah.
Do you know what it's for? Or did you just see it on Instagram and just do it because you thought it was cool?
Yeah.
And for example, like I think they were talking about when you do the single leg clean up into a box, like you're supposed to like delay
the landing. Yeah. So you get the hip lock. Yeah. Yeah.
But then everyone's just going out, bang, bang, bang. And I'm like, well, you know, you're not even doing what the exercise is built for. Do you know what I mean? So but
it's people that don't. I don't like. Look. I've done things wrong. I've done a lot of them Bosch things wrong. Definitely, or not as well as they should have been done. 100%. But I think it's, and I don't want to say it's people that like that's saying us and them. It's when we don't understand where things fit into a plan, especially in the rehab process. For me, like, I think the Bosch stuff fits in at a certain point really, really nicely at a certain point in the rehab process. But like, I'm thinking about that from the beginning. Like, if I'm thinking about a hip lock, I want to do some hip lock work at someone before I return them to running. I definitely want to do that. But like, I understand if they can't, I'm almost doing that stuff from the beginning, because if they can't get a frontal plane at their pelvis, if they can't adduct or abduct their hip, then like doing the hip lock work in the fancy drill is absolutely useless. It will not help them. So it's understanding like where it fits in along the process. And that, I think that's where people go wrong with systems and stuff like that. They can't fit it back into what they're already doing.
And then I think the other thing is, if you're just going fancy with all these drills, okay, if that's all you're doing, then you don't have infinity amount of time. You're taking something else away from that to do that. So you've got to know why you're doing it. What are you taking away? Is that going to have a consequence elsewhere? And then, like, if you're doing all these drills and that, are you actually sprinting your athletes with good technique?
Yeah.
Because that's pretty important as well. Because last time I checked, that's probably that's really high specificity.
Yeah.
So you can get some pretty good transfer there. And then I think with a lot of people try and the speed work, they try and solve problems just with strength work in the gym. But on the flip side of that, I think when the Bosch stuff originally came out, people went anti-strength as well. Some people went down that thing. It's just like, know your tools, know where they all fit in. And as we talked about before, you know, if you go down the rabbit hole of a system, just understand that other things still work out there.
Yeah. The anti-strength. I don't think you should be anti-strength. I know you shouldn't be anti-strength, but I think what Bosch has hopefully helped, now I am not sure about this, but I think he has hopefully helped people understand that there can be a negative transfer of training. And people understood that in the past with regards to like overtraining and fatigue. So like, I'm just destroying someone and now their sport is suffering as a result. But I think negative transfer in training comes in many forms, more than just like fatigue. So there's like, you can you're losing significant amounts of range of motion around your body. You're getting very, very stiff. You're struggling to maybe overcome muscle slack, like you're muscling through everything, like your, I don't know, rate of force development type of stuff actually could be getting worse as a result of you getting stronger, because you actually have to muscle through everything. There's so many, like the motor patterns of you might choose more back extension, more knee extension rather than all different things. So the negative transfer comes in different ways rather than just fatigue, but that doesn't mean strength is bad or you shouldn't do strength work.
Yeah, 100%. You just got to, it's all about the right dose of everything and how it fits into play. And it probably depends on the sport as well, right? So obviously,
exactly, man. Exactly.
And then it also depends on people's like training history. You know, quite often, like the low hanging fruit for like maybe a younger athlete is a lot of strength work.
Yeah.
But then the back end of that, like you might have an athlete that's like stiff, broken, injured. You know, you can do a lot amount of strength work and do a lot of these other things to try and get guys on the pitch and play well. It's going to depend on a series of factors of sport, the athlete, their training history, their injury history, and this is always changing. And that's why it's good to have an understanding of all these different systems, so then you can choose the appropriate method to try and to get the tool or the adaptation that you're trying to get.
I was going to ask you for maybe the last question. When I wrote down before, what's the plan for you for like the next, what do you think in the next 2 to 5 years? But it's probably a bad time to ask that question considering you're.
Listen, ideally I'd like to work for a big team event. Like that's what I want to do. You know, I haven't really had much success there. People mustn't like me. I'm not really sure, but I also don't want to. I've gone down the path of this private stuff, but I've been sitting on the fence for a few years what I want to do. So I want to make the decision pretty soon. Like if something doesn't come up there, I want to go full stream ahead, because at the moment, I think I need to go full steam ahead with one thing. We'll see what happens, because I've just been sitting on the fence and I've been.
I don't know.
Yes,
but like
if someone wants to come back with me with a good gig. And I think it's really important with those things, because, you know, I'm not a younger intern or anything or younger athlete that lives at home and can get paid nothing.
It needs to be a good gig for you at this stage of your career.
And it's got to be with people that I want to work with, because I've seen teams where a lot of people aren't happy and they're miserable. So you want to be in the right team environment, the right people around you. You want, you know, people to challenge each other, push forward, and have a really good culture. If not, mate, I want to get my templates up and selling as many as you are, you know?
What
come to Ireland.
What templates do you have at the moment?
I just got three training ones. I've got like an off season, the pre-season, and the power one. But
the off-season one, GA players are going to be getting that. They'll be gobbling that up now over the next couple of months, I'd say.
Mate, most of my buyers have all been Irish, so I need to come out and start doing some other work. I might put some stuff together for some fighters and things like that. I don't know, man. I've been a bit rattled with the whole like lockdown thing and you know what I mean? So but
you'll be good. There's one thing you can't replace, like is like expertise and integrity, I think, which you have in abundance. So like you can't replace that. So no matter what you end up choosing to do or whatever, I have no doubt you'll be good, man.
And Kears keeps on saying, come over to US and stay with me. So we'll see.
Go over and stay with him.
I don't know what will happen there, but
that could be dangerous for everyone, actually. And then the last question, which this wasn't planned, but I asked Joel basically what 3 people that he had interviewed on his podcast, if he was like stuck on a desert island for a week, what 3 coaches that he had interviewed would he bring with him? So I won't ask you who you've interviewed, but is there 3 coaches that you would, who would you bring to a desert island that you're like, I'd love a week to learn from those?
To learn, or is it just learning, or is it
it can be whatever you want. I'll leave you make the criteria.
And does the desert island have rum, like in Pirates of the Caribbean?
Yeah, it has loads of rum. Yeah.
All right, I'm going with you. I'm going with Kia, and then I'm going to go with Dan Path.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty cool.
Does Dan drink rum?
Hey?
Does Dan drink rum?
If I'm there, he has to.
That's the rule. That's the rule on the island. Yeah. You got to have Dan, don't you? I think, imagine being able to just spend a week with that man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be, I think he'd be one of mine as well. I really think so. All right, brother. What is there, where can people find you? That's another question I need to remember to ask.
Oh, mate, I've been really bad on social media lately. I don't know, for some reason I've been off it because I got sick of looking at it. But my Instagram's Graeme_Morris. I do have a Facebook, but I don't think I put Graeme Morris Strength and Conditioning. Twitter, I can't. I'm on there. I don't even know what my feeder is. I don't really do it because people are probably still arguing about back squats, depths, and Olympic lifting benefits, and I was just like, I can't do that.
Yeah, I use Twitter for crypto, for Bitcoin.
I do. Yeah,
it's so good for that. Now look, there's a lot of bullshit there, but you just see so much interaction there. But the S&C community, or the rehab stuff, the injury stuff, it's people it's just so sad on Twitter. It wrecks my head.
Yeah, I get horse racing tips off Twitter, but yeah.
Twitter is really good for stuff like that, but not for
even stock tips, because you just want to follow the herd. It's like, this thing's getting pumped. Let's get in. Let's pull it out.
Yeah, literally the other day, did you see Elon Musk tweeted a poll that everyone's on about him not paying taxes, right? This is the richest man in the world. He doesn't pay taxes. He says, I don't pay taxes because I don't have a salary. So I don't take a salary. I don't take any bonuses from the company. He's just richest in terms of wealth, what his company is worth. So he put up a poll saying, should I sell, I don't know, was it like 20 billion worth of Tesla stock or something? I probably get the number wrong. And then I'll have to pay tax on it. So, and the answers were yes and no. And because of Twitter and his poll, it turned out to be yes, but I don't know, has he sold it or announced it yet? But his Tesla stock is after dropping, the stock is down 20%. Because of fucking a Twitter poll, which is those people voting on $20 billion. So that's why I love Twitter. I voted no because I have some Tesla stock, and I was like, no, if he this is going to dump on me completely now. But stocks is good. Financial stuff is really good on Twitter.
Yeah,
not back squats though.
Yeah,
man. So any other words of wisdom for us? Are we good there?
No, man, I don't think I have much more for you, to be honest.
Yeah.
I haven't got much wisdom at all. Let's face it.
We've tapped it out for the day anyway. Graeme, you're a star, man. Thank you very much. I appreciate everything you do and all that stuff. So thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it, mate. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. And I'll see you soon.
Yeah.